Mm.
and the truth is gonna win in the end, right?
Yeah.
Because it's stronger than the lie. I mean,
Right.
once you go down the path of lying, you can never stop, right? You have to continually expand your fake universe.
Yeah.
Um, and anybody that actually buys into your lie, you would not like them. They
Yeah.
don't even know you, right?
Right.
They don't know the real you, and you know it.
We need people talking about that stuff, so that's great.
I think so. I think one of the things that's happened, with this whole political change is people are not as afraid to speak up. We
Right.
had we had a circumstance where we were out somewhere, and it was at a buffet, and
Hmm.
we were talking in the line, and the people in front of us were like, "Hey, you know what? We have the similar views," and then we ended up having dinner with them,
Oh wow, really?
and it was like amazing, and I, not that long ago, I would have been terrified of being canceled,
Right.
right? Like, if you speak up at all, and I worked for corporation. I worked for Chase back in 2000, from 16 to 2000, and it was just brutal.
Really?
Um, the 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 fact that you were going to be canceled, or like cancellation was right around the corner if you didn't comply, um, if you didn't conform to what their standards were, you were going to be gone.
Hmm.
So they made it real clear with marketing, with everything,
Wow.
including, like, I was a top performing. I've been in retail banking multiple times, and I was top performing, and had an extraordinary amount of knowledge. And
Right.
then the regional manager comes out, and he's ethnically diverse, and I'm white, and he
Sure.
says, we're going to hire this other guy, Ramiro, and he's going to come in and work with you. And I just want to make sure you're okay. But the business plan you wrote is so amazing that I gave it to our business team, and they're going to use it for their marketing plan.
Really?
Yeah, like, because we had I was in retail, and I was actually a private client banker.
Yeah.
So I was dealing with, customers that had more than 250K. And
Okay.
part of my plan for the branch, when I would take it over, would be to have a real business focus and really dive into the business community, because where we were was kind of an older community. And so I wrote this, nice business plan. I've written business plans before, and they're like, yeah, gave it to them. They're gonna use it. Brilliant. Not gonna hire you. We're gonna hire Ramiro. I have nothing against Ramiro. I worked with him for over a year,
Right.
and probably had 8 to 10 questions for me a week. I had no questions for him ever.
Right.
So, what was that all about?
Right.
Whatever their dogma was, right? I mean, like,
Yeah, focused way more on
so
the image of who's getting hired rather than the experience and the level
whatever
of.
the DEI was, yeah. And they
Hmm.
pitched big time. Robin DiAngelo's book, this is back when it was first coming out.
Mm.
There were, like, all these scary stories, like from the CEO of retail banking, got on to and wrote a story about how she was absolutely terrified of her kids, and she was black, of her kids getting pulled over by cops.
Mm.
And I mean, like, kids don't get pulled over by cops when they're driving brand new $100,000 BMWs,
Right.
right? They don't. I don't care what your color is, right?
Right.
That's not the demographic.
Yeah.
So, so, like, I mean, and I didn't think that on the spot. I was just like, God, this is so weird. But
Yeah.
later, processing it, I'm like, what in the heck were these guys up to? Like, it's just so crazy.
Right.
So we're out of all that now. No,
Yes.
no, I'm a loan originator with rate mortgage,
Yeah.
and I have, I work out of my house. I don't even have an office to go into. So
Do you like it a lot better?
Yeah, and the company is not so dogmatic.
Right.
They're they have some of the programs that are kind of pitching diversity, but they're not slamming it down your throat. They're not making
Right.
you do trainings on it, you know, and sending you out notices that you should definitely read white privilege.
Right. Yeah, that was the crazy part, was just the amount of force on pushing it from some of these companies or groups. It was like, geez, I don't mind. It's like one thing to pitch an idea and maybe some people have different opinions, but when you're shoving it down everybody's throat, it's
Right, when you're enforcing it,
right.
like this is the way it is. I was there at the when George Floyd, the whole situation came up, and I remember they had it was like a group meeting, and it was
Yeah.
during that whole thing, and and basically, they were going around and everybody was expressing their concerns, and I was like, well, I mean, obviously it was a drug overdose, so like I wouldn't, just hold back your judgments.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make too much of this in in what happened. Obviously there's some societal issues that we
Sure.
got to deal with because this is like exploded on us, and everybody's afraid.
Yeah.
But come on, I mean, like that's not true. And people were saying, I remember watching a podcast where they were on like a campus, and
Hmm.
it was like, how many black people, unarmed black people, were shot by cops or shot by cops every year? And people were answering thousands, thousands. And it's like, well, would you be surprised to know the number was 12 last year?
Right.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like such a different world. It's like it's not
Hmm.
thousands.
Right.
So
Oh, it's this very small minority that has just is very loud, and so everyone hears it and thinks, "Wow, it must be this massive problem," and it's
well, and all of the corporations got behind it big time. I
yeah.
remember Chase donated 5 million, and I mean, I think that was the total corporate donations were like 100 million within a couple of months.
Wow.
And when these corporations are putting that money behind all that, those voices get super loud, right? Because
Hmm.
they have the ability to put themselves out there and travel and even hire protesters,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Which we now know that a lot of that did happen.
Yeah.
So, a lot of what we think, oh my gosh, people were out protesting. Well, yeah, if you're getting paid $200 a day, you might do that too,
You might pick up
right?
that side gig.
Listen,
Yeah.
it's just a job
Right.
at that point.
Right. No, absolutely. That's a good point, and that does happen quite a bit. These groups.
Yeah, I mean, like they were bussing in for the Democratic, conventions and everything. They were
Hmm.
busing people in and busing them around the country, and that's where a big chunk of that 1.5 billion went.
Yep.
Right? I mean, like,
Yeah. What a
so
crazy.
yeah, okay.
What a crazy amount of money for a campaign.
Seriously, yeah. But I think they had a particular idea that people would fall in line,
Yeah.
and it just this time it was way too big to rig. I think it was horrifically rigged, and
Hmm.
it was actually too big. So the true numbers, and I hope and pray that Trump gets in there and just investigates and gets the
Right.
truth out. But my guess is it's going to be 90-60, and it'll end. If he does that, it'll end the Democratic Party on the spot. It
Sure.
won't be one, because
Mm.
if you lost 90-60,
Right.
obviously you're wrong. If you 75-75 and you kept some of your guys in there, you're like, oh, we got something to fight for. If it's
Right.
90-60 and everybody knows, hey,
Hmm.
you guys are on the wrong track,
Right.
right? The
Yeah.
country, politics is supposed to serve people, the
Yeah.
people of the country. And if the people of the country have stood up and said, hey, not you guys suck. Your ideas suck. It's making everything worse. Stop.
Yeah.
Then they'll change. Most of them.
Yeah. No, it's been. I was just talking to my family members today too. It's been interesting where it seems like there's even from, because I don't know if you saw the Trump just got Person of the Year from Time Magazine, and just some of these more media outlets now taking his side. I don't know if that's a turn of people seeing, okay, maybe we are in the wrong, or if there's something else behind it. But I think it's interesting because, we saw for so long an anti-Trump type messaging from major media outlets. So
well, yeah, I mean, and Trump was painted as Adolf Hitler,
right,
over and over and over again. And the only popularly elected official in World War II was Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else by proxy.
Right.
So, and Churchill didn't even make his own speeches. The guy that you hear on there was an actor because he was drunk all the time. Right. So, blood, sweat, and tears, and an actor.
His voice.
He might have been involved in writing it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually him.
Right. He was just the vocal voice piece.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So rigged. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to say. It's crazy. That's crazy times we're living in. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I think the truth is still the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And, religiously, you say God is truth.
Right.
And the truth is good. And the truth is gonna win in the end. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's stronger than the lie. I mean, once you go down the path of lying, you can never stop, right? You have to continually expand your fake universe.
Yeah.
And anybody that actually buys into your lie, you would not like them because they don't even know you, right? They don't know the real you, and you know it. So so it's a blind avenue. You just can't expect anything from it, anything good.
Right.
And I think one of the things that we've done, like in our society, is we believe in what the concept, the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can do anything if the ends justify the means.
Sure.
You can do anything to anybody because, hey, the ends are going to be great. You can tell any lie because eventually you're going to get to the utopia.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope because then you just start justifying all sorts of actions to, and then it just keeps piling up until you look at it going, oh, that didn't really ever justify the end.
Well, and you come at it the other direction too, right? I mean, like the ends justify the means to get to utopia, but also to get away from Hitler and all the horrible things that side did.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, well, did that side? I mean, like if they're accusing Trump of being Hitler, and Hitler has been dogmatically, vilified forever, is that even real?
Right. Like what?
So sure. Like what's real history? Do we already live in 1984? Are we being fed unreality to try to get us to the utopian vision? Right?
Yeah.
How much of it I've found, I saw something on Tucker the other day and it was about Nixon, right? And when I was growing up, Nixon was totally vilified. And I remember I was maybe second or third grade and I'm in school and people are like, oh, we got him out. And then when Carter was elected, it was like this heroic thing. And, oh, we're back on track. And so, I just believed it, right? I mean, like people say it and you're a kid and you just believe it. And then come to find out that he did nothing, that he didn't do anything wrong, that they took one interpretation of something he said, which was to protect CIA agents from being exposed.
Right.
And they said, oh, he's in the middle of a cover-up. And the media ran with it like crazy. And then he said, for the good of the nation, I'll step aside. And then what did they do? They pardoned him for everything so nothing would ever have to go to court and expose all their lies, not expose him. Right?
Yeah.
And he didn't even know. Like one of the guys that was a lawyer on his team, explained this on this episode, and I thought, oh my gosh, how many things did I learn in childhood that are just nonsense, just
Right.
made up
Right.
narratives.
Why do you think why do you think there is these made up narratives? Like what's the goal?
And justify the means. Like people won't comply if
Mm,
they don't have pressure to, artificial pressure, right? A lie to get them to go where the people that are so smart and decided that they get to play God want them to go, right?
right.
It's something like that.
I wonder why, like in a situation, do you think like Nixon Carter, for example, where, kind of paint him as a villain so that the public goes, oh yeah, we need to get rid of him, the whole switch up. Like why, like what, to what purpose? You know what I'm saying? Why when they pick someone to be the villain versus someone who's going to come in and save the day and this is a new candidate, what purpose does it hold? Is it just control? Is that what you think it is? Or what do you think that utopia they're trying to get to is?
Well, I think that it is control, and
Yeah.
I think that they are believe that they're the chosen ones,
Mm,
right? Because they've been enlightened. That they have knowledge. It's kind of like they believe that they're parents, right? Like if you're a parent, you have tons of knowledge that your children don't have.
right.
So you yell at them to not touch the stove when their hands getting close, like, whoa, don't,
Right.
because you're trying to protect them, right?
Yeah.
And they feel like but I don't believe that they believe they're protecting us.
No.
I
Yeah.
think it's way darker than that. I think they believe that they're protecting everything, like nature, and it's very pagan. It's like if you're the
Mm,
chosen ones and they're the unchosen ones, then
right.
what if there's too many of them?
Right.
What if we only want 500 million people on Earth, which is a UN document, right?
Yeah.
500 million. That means that 15 out of 16 people got to go,
Right.
right? Now, of course, they say, well, there'll be a great reset and we'll just, people will stop having babies so much and it'll happen naturally, but it
Sure.
won't, right?
Right.
That's not the idea.
Yeah.
And if you have that idea that you can play God, what won't you come up with? Because if you think that there's any chance at all that your power would be subverted,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll do whatever it takes to not have that happen.
Mm. So almost a feeling like they are in a position, it's like it's their right to be over those who aren't in that group. So us, general people.
They believe it, right?
Yeah. Right. Huh.
Some religions believe that they're the chosen ones,
True.
right?
That's a good point.
And if you're the chosen one, what can you not do to the unchosen?
Right. And that goes back to your ends justify the means. It's like anything's okay if you're that person.
Right. I remember my ex-wife made the comment on, I think it was about Trump supporters in 2020.
Yeah.
And she said something like, they're just crud crazy.
Yeah.
And I said, do you know that if you believe that somebody's like that, there are no limits on what you can do to them or what you'll approve of having done to them?
Right.
You're going down the wrong path. And, eventually she said something like, your opinions are out of bounds and I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I'm like, you're the one that was talking about it, but no problem. We don't have to discuss it anymore. And we never have.
Right.
So, and she still has those beliefs, I'm sure.
Yeah. People have really, I think a lot of people don't want to get too into the details, into the into the specifics because it's painful, right? You have to really put away your own thought processes and go, okay, I got to just look at this from a very one perspective, just find that truth like you're talking about. So I think a lot of people don't want to go through that process.
Totally agree. I mean, because I think the process to finding truth is never out there. It's always in here.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to find truth inside yourself. You're not going to find it out there. You're going to find distortion and, self-interest and, people that want you to believe things. So they say things in a particular way. You're going to find truth, in the world. Absolutely. It's all around us, right? You can see it.
Right.
But, people's actions can be, they can be rigged.
Right.
To make you believe or to try to get you to believe whatever they want you to believe.
Right. No, it definitely can twist the truth to be to your convenience, even if it's not the truth. It's a distortion of it.
And it's not to your convenience either. Right. Everybody loses in that game. Right?
True.
Because if you can't find the truth in yourself, you're going to have all kinds of blind spots.
Yeah. No,
and
so
those
true.
Blind spots will show up everywhere. Everybody else will know it, but you won't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is, may in the moment, when you make, when you lie or you're being dishonest, but down the road, at some point, those pieces are going to start falling apart for everybody, not just the people around you, but yourself as well. It's a good point.
Right.
That's a great point. So that leads me to a question, actually, because I was reading through what you sent me, the different kind of the questionnaire, and as I was reading it, it really seems like through your different experiences, you've been almost on a journey of finding that truth and happiness and success in the different parts of your journey, right? The different aspects of your life and the experiences. And so I'm curious if we were to take it back to the beginning, as a youth, as growing up, what was that beginning of your journey, that kind of upbringing, those formational transformation, or those formation years, kind of becoming who you are today, that led to some of the career paths you chose and the belief systems you have now? What were those early years like?
I mean, I was always I was in the gifted program when I was a kid, and I started playing chess at like 4. My dad was really good at games, so he kind of taught me how to analyze stuff. But he was also he said something to me that stuck with me. He said, I have a little more. He was talking about my mom with taxes, and they're both accountants. And he said, I have a little more larceny in my heart than your mom. And I thought, that's a weird thing to say, but I just, I let it go.
Right.
But then I thought about it later, and, he certainly, didn't teach me the value of like necessarily putting in the work, but kind of rigging it a little bit, like it's not rigging. I mean, like I knew games to the point where when I was a teenager, I would, I remember going away and I was in a group and there people would play games, right? Like they'd play Risk and poker and, whatever the game was. And I won every single time. There was never any time that I ever lost a game, ever, including like Othello. A guy comes in, I've never played the game in my life. He teaches me the rules, and I win every single game. So, like, I knew how to play games.
Yeah.
To the point where they excluded me. Like, I'm like, where is everybody? I'm out and about, and I find them in a room, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Because I didn't understand, like, that there's something more important than winning a game.
Sure.
Right? The relationship is always more important than the game. So I thought, I kind of grew up with, just pound people and like gain some form of status by winning games.
Mm.
And then, you know, if I knew a game was coming up, I had the work ethic of like, you know, practicing and learning and, you know, making sure that I could be on top. But it didn't convert to like, it didn't convert to school at all.
Sure.
It didn't convert to things that you would build on, you know, necessarily, other than chess.
Right.
Because to beat people that play really good chess, you're going to have to study for a pretty long time. You're going to have to know like lots of the rules, opening moves, theories, themes. And, you know, my dad was able to convey a lot of that stuff to me. But, I mean, in school, starting in high school, even in 7th grade, we moved to Denver, and I just didn't want to do it. I wasn't able to maintain focus and struggled with it. However, if I listened in class, if I showed up and listened in class, which wasn't always the case, I would always get somewhere near 100% on the test.
Interesting.
Even if I didn't do the homework. So just because of my ability to sort things, I think that's the whole gaming thing, is like, if you can sort what's important and what's not, and you can like remember that, then you're going to do well on tests. So I've always passed tests throughout my life.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. So kind of an ability to see almost the strategy or the leverages or the important part of what you were doing.
When I got into college with math, I had a teacher, and basically I explained to him that most of the time I don't have to do the work. I'll see the answer first, and then I can backtrack into how to do the work.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's just kind of a weird thing.
Is that just something you've kind of always had, just an ability you've always had, or is that something your dad taught you, or
I think I picked it up, not necessarily from my dad, but from the experience in childhood. It's like I needed to know answers, otherwise there might be trouble, right? My parents had kind of a conflictual relationship, and it wasn't always. My dad was pretty peaceful. My mom was pretty angry.
Okay. I see.
And so if I didn't have right answers right away, then, it was troublesome. And I learned to, hide also, very much. And when you hide, like, even if you don't lie, if you hide the truth, you stop making progress.
Right.
Especially as a kid, because how can anybody address the real you if you're hiding it?
Yeah.
And how can you learn anything from anybody if you're hiding where you're actually at? But if where you're actually at is unsafe because you're going to get attacked for it, you learn to hide it.
Right. When did you come to that? Like, because I'm assuming growing up, kind of growing those habits of, hiding because you don't want to be in trouble or you don't want to be affected by or attacked.
When did you be yelled at?
Right.
Right.
When did you come to that realization though that, okay, I'm hiding truths from, when did you come to that realization?
My 40s probably.
Okay.
I mean, like, looking back, I could see it. But, when in the moment, I couldn't see it at all. I just thought, this is what I got to do to get through the day. This is what I got to do. I've got to, I'm not allowed to not know this. So, which prevented me from even learning how to be with it. Right. So I would get to whatever level I could get to. I got to a pretty decent level playing baseball. Right. Like, I had an errorless season when I played third base at 12 before we moved to Denver. And I think I hit something like 780 with a bunch of triples and doubles and, fantastic. But it didn't convert to getting any better than that.
Interesting.
Like, Like, so in later years, like when I tried to go out for the high school team, now my parents, like we moved to Denver and the little league was far away, so I didn't get to play.
Right.
But by the time I got to high school, I wasn't good enough to make the team.
Right. Why is that?
Because I hadn't continued and I hadn't learned like for multiple years because I couldn't, and I couldn't just speak it like, hey, I need some training. Right. I had to be the, bravado. Hey, I'm good enough. I always do this and, yeah, pick me. Instead of, hey, I've been out of this for a while, can you give me some pointers that I can like really work on? Today me would lead with that. Right? It'd be like, I got some more to learn. I'm probably behind. Let me put in the extra work. But the kid couldn't do that because, it was a threat. Like if people know that you're vulnerable, if people know that you're behind, what are they going to do? They're going to criticize you for it. You're going to be, under like all this new emotional pressure. I didn't have the strength to deal with that.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I see what you're saying. So really being able to come to the table and say, I don't know. I don't have all the skills. I don't have the answer as of yet. And that was something growing up, you weren't there yet. That makes sense.
Nobody ever trained me to do that.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. I mean, like they trained me to hide my vulnerabilities. And I mean, like the world is pretty dangerous and, you don't want to be vulnerable with everybody, but there's also people that you need to be able to rely on too.
Right.
And if you can't even speak to those people, then you're screwed. Right. You're never going to get any better.
Right. No, if you don't have that net of support, I think, because it really is, especially in, I think, society in general, but even in families, parents, having the answers, doing it right is rewarded, whereas not knowing, not having the answers, making mistakes is oftentimes looked down on, punished, criticized. And in a lot of ways, it should be the opposite. It's like, thank you for telling me you don't know. Thank you for coming and looking for, but that's more of a rarity more often, I think, than not.
And as an adult, probably going to cost money too, right? If you don't know what you're doing, right, and you get into a project and you don't know, you're going to either waste money or waste time, which turns out to be money in the business world. So you don't want to lead with that because nobody's going to want to be on your team, right?
Right.
Unless you do it the right way. And I mean, if you do it the right way, you go to the correct resources. You ask questions of people who can help you solve problems. Right? Yeah. You don't ask the wrong people. If you can figure that out.
Yeah. So you clearly have been successful in the work you've done in your careers, in the banking sector and the finance sector. So how did kind of being able to, how did that mindset of growing up then play out in your career, and how did you find that success?
Well, by the time I got to middle 20s, I'm going to say I was a little more willing to just take risks.
Sure.
Rather than like put it out there that I wasn't capable. Or hide that I wasn't capable. I was like, I was willing to like ask people. So I remember I went to, I had a casino in California. It was a card room, and it was a catastrophe. I was in the business with my dad.
Yeah.
And I understood how to, deal cards and play, of course, but I didn't understand how to run a business at all.
Sure.
And I just, he had the idea, we just discount and then the people will beat a path to our door. And it actually is a lot more than that, right? There's people that need to be honored and taken care of in a particular way for them to get affinity for you.
Sure.
I didn't have that. And then employees also, managing employees. Like I didn't have any of that. So at some point, I came into the business one day and I'm like, you know what? We're closed. And nobody expected it. I didn't even really expect it. But it was like, we're failing. And I just decided we're closed and I'm going to go do something else. Because this doesn't work. And I just need to accept it and just deal with reality. And because I did that, we didn't lose more money, which we would have. And we were able to sell off the assets, and it kind of floated us until I went, and I just accepted a job working at an audio store.
Okay.
And at that store, I didn't know anything. I had a stereo, but I didn't really know anything about selling audio.
Right.
But I realized, okay, so I got a couple of kids already. I have to at least get through the Christmas season, right? Yeah. I think I started in September. And for the first time, I opened up and I was like, you know what? I don't know how to do this, but teach me. And people shared a few things. I tried them. I kind of customized it to my own program. And I found a tremendous amount of success. I was partnered with this other guy, and we were the number one audio sales people during that period, during the Christmas season. And, got awards and everything, and they were all happy with me. And during that Christmas season, one of the stereos I sold was to a manager at Wells Fargo. And she was laughing for the entire transaction. And right on the spot, she says, you know what? You're my assistant manager. Why don't you come work for me? And I'm like,
really?
Can't do that. I got my other plans. I'm ready to go. There was another opportunity that was coming up in the gaming thing where I was going to set up a card room on a boat that was actually called the Petaluma Queen. And it was a riverboat that this guy had built on his own for $1 million. Wow. And it was a real riverboat. And so, I make this contract with him in April or something. And after I'd left the good guys, and it doesn't work at all. And within a couple of months, that whole thing is collapsed, and the licensing on his part wasn't right. And I'm like, okay, I'm done here. And then I called her and she's like, hey, that job's gone, but I can hire you as an officer. And I said, I'll take it. I got to make money. I got bills to pay and kids to keep fed. So,
yeah.
And for, 3 or 4 weeks, I just watched other people do their thing. And she was helping, but she was kind of more behind the scenes.
Sure.
And I watched what they were doing and I thought, that doesn't work. What they were doing was, basically they were never connecting with anybody. They were just offering all the time. And by that time I'd learned to listen and pay attention, right? Instead of hide, so I'd come out of my shell, I guess you could say. And I had more courage. Like when I was a kid, I'm going to say my level of courage was very low. Either I was beat down or I was, I never found the opportunity where I felt like courage was the appropriate thing. But after, once I finally decided to shut down that business, it was a courageous step. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And then people complained and the employees complained and the guy that I was leasing from complained, even though it was a month to month. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to go with other people just because I don't want to upset people.
Right.
I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to decide this time. I'm not going to hide and then, trick people to go the way I want them to go. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to speak up. And I don't think I ever had that strength before. So mid 20s, speak up.
Yeah.
And then in banking, after a month of nothing, basically, I went to training and did all that stuff. And then I'm a couple weeks at the branch and not really achieving any results. And I finally went to the manager and I said, when are you going to train me?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, you already had training. I said, no. You know how to sell here. And you want me to do that, but you haven't trained me. And they can't do it. Because I was watching them, they're just like, hey, would you like to open a CD with $5,000 or more today? Hey, would you like to open a credit card? Hey, and the answer was always no, right? And then the one person that says yes, they get declined.
Right.
So she comes out and she does this presentation. She's like working the line with me. Mm-hmm. And this guy comes up and she's like, you know what? You are one of our most important customers. And, for our important customers, we always like to put overdraft protection on your account because we never want you to have a negative experience. And I really apologize, but we have never done this for you. I don't know how you slipped through the cracks, but I'd love to take care of this for you today. And I thank you for being a customer. And of course the guy said yes. And of course he was approved. And I thought, wow, such a different conversation, right?
Right.
You're coming at it from this whole other angle. And of course, by then I'd learned to listen, give up the whole pride thing. And I did that and just annihilated the entire branch. Like the people, another guy had been hired 2 months before me. He got like maybe 6. I got 50.
Wow.
He got a volume of, 100,000 and I got 700,000. And I didn't even know what I was selling, really. Like I didn't understand the products. I'd never really had, I'd never had a Wells Fargo credit card. My credit wasn't even that good. I didn't understand equity lines, and I sold 3 of them. And the way I sold them, I said, hey, you know what? It's a great financial insurance plan, and to be honest with you, I'll give you a shirt. And people would laugh, right? So laughter sells. Hard sells. Do you want to do this? That doesn't sell at all.
Right.
So, I mean, I've always, she sticks in my mind as one of my greatest trainers. And that was the only training session she ever gave me. 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes.
And what would you say, because I know you kind of told me exactly what she said, but if you were to look back and pinpoint what exactly was her secret, this kind of the secret sauce that she did, what was it?
It would step into their world and offer to take care of them. That's it. I mean, because people want to be taken care of. They don't want to be sold anything, right?
Right.
If you're a very important customer and you're vulnerable to a negative experience, then you, hang on a second, my son
you're good.
is reaching out. But if you're vulnerable to a negative experience, they don't want that either, right?
Sure.
They don't want to be sold a credit card, but if it doesn't have an annual fee and it's the way that this company that you've already chosen to do business with operates, you're probably going to be really open to it. At least you're going to ask more questions, right? But if they're trying to jam something down your throat because they need to meet a goal, right? Hey, you want to do this? There was an assistant manager, and she was 20-year veteran, and I swear she would hammer people in line, just one after another, and ask these questions of them, and she would get a sale, like maybe 1 out of 100, and I would ask almost nobody, and my sheet would be full of 10 applications and 7 approvals.
Wow.
So that's another thing I learned to do, just sort. It's why are you asking an 18-year-old kid if he needs a credit line? Just because you want to look like you're working? Like you want
Right.
to look like you're doing something. No,
Yeah.
he's more appropriate for a student visa, maybe, right? For $500 or a student checking account with a new debit card. Back then, debit cards were pretty new.
Sure.
Like services that would be appropriate to that person, that they
Yeah.
might be inspired to take advantage of, right? So that person, you've got to tailor your conversation to them. But for her, it was just hammer, 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 hammer. And I thought, this is such an example of who I know I don't want to be.
Sure.
Number one, each customer is having to say no, which is a negative experience. When you have to say no to somebody, like they're getting into your space and like forcing you to be like, I don't need that. Thank you. Right.
Right.
Back then, Wells Fargo used to have a thing called a 5-minute max.
Mhm.
And if you had to wait in line more than 5 minutes, they'd give you $5 directly to your checking account or
Wow.
your whatever account you had. Yeah. And I remember once I became a manager, which was only took me a year from not being in banking to being a manager. I was an assistant manager in 6 months.
Wow.
A client came up and there was nobody in line. And I rushed over to the line. I said, whoa. Don't come up yet. We have a 5-minute minimum. And they just broke into hilarious laughter. Actually, the entire branch did. Right. And when she came up, which was right away, of course, everybody knew I was joking. I determined it was appropriate to get her an equity line. She did the application on the spot. Right.
Yeah.
Just, you're in their space. I mean, like she very much, her name was Valerie Lowe. She very much taught me that, like, be where people are, right? Get out of yourself and be with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Connect with them on their level. Meet them where they are. That's interesting. I don't think a lot of people think of sales in that type of mindset. They look at it more of that. Gotta give them something. Gotta put it in their face. Gotta convince them of what they need to have.
Right. Yeah, like that's sale. But if you're in their space, then it's kind of like service, right?
Right.
You're doing a service for them, and they trust you because of that. If you go into their space rather than trying to pull them into yours,
right?
They already see you're the kind of person they want to be around. People didn't just come to me for sales; they came to me to help, and I was always willing to help. I had thousands of dollars in refunds. People would have egregious overdraft fees. I don't even think you could do this anymore without getting fired. And I would waive hundreds of dollars of fees for people that I thought, this is ridiculous. You're getting 5 fees in a day. The first fee was caused by a small overdraft, and then the other ones piled up because of the other fees.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be part of a company that does that. And they tolerated it because we were always number one.
That's interesting. But that was the key to some of your success too, was being able to meet them where they are, do right by the customer, and that's what made you number one. Right. So it's interesting. It's interesting how a lot of people don't equate the success to the way you're handling the customer, to the way you're treating that customer, and they don't often equate the two to that.
Well, and I think it comes back to honesty too. It's like, if I was in front of them speaking to them, they knew I was authentic because I believed it.
Right?
I believed it. I knew that if you come to me with a problem, I'm going to do everything in my power to take care of you. That you're in the best bank in the world, because that's the type of branch that I run. And they would come to me from all over the city, and there was like 9 different locations. They would come to me because they knew, right? Their friends would say, "Oh, go see Eric," and I would take care of them, whether it be a problem or whether it be a solution. Hey, I can get you hooked up with the financial advisor. I can get you, I can take care of your business accounts and save you fees. and earn you more money. They knew I was always going to do the right thing because I knew it.
Mm.
I could convey that to them.
So explain that to me, because a lot of people, I don't think, well, where does that come from for you? Because a lot of people in what they're doing, I don't think they believe 100% in what they're doing. They're not 100% committed in the path that they're on.
I think it's, I just proved it to myself. You know, like when people would come up, I would demonstrate that, right? I would fight for them. Like when I wasn't the manager, I would fight with the manager. Hey, look, this needs to be taken care of. And, you know, you need to sign off on it. And, you know, this is the kind of customer we have. And we don't want to have a company with a horrible reputation that takes advantage of people like this. You know, we want to, you know, show mercy. You know, fine, we make some fees, but not this much.
Right.
And because I did that over and over again, then I could convey that that's the kind of person I was.
So proving it to yourself, and then which built a foundation for it. I see.
Yeah, because people understand fakers, right? They just look you in the eye. Yeah. They're like, oh, smooth talker.
Right.
Right? Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely true. I think people see right through that persona. If it doesn't feel authentic, I think that's a big turn away for a lot of people.
Right. And so, if you don't believe it, they're gonna know.
Right. Yeah. If you're not really committed to it, why would they feel confident in you?
Right.
You know? Huh. That's really, I like that. So explain, because I didn't know about you having the card business and the casino. I knew a little bit from the questionnaire about the banking. So how does the winery fit into this? Well, how did you even get into that? And because that's kind of a really unique, comparatively to some of the other careers.
I got into it from banking. So Wells Fargo kind of dissed me, and I made a mistake. I was too arrogant. I thought I had led the region with, we had like 7% of the assets in the region. And for like 2 years straight, we produced over 25% of the results.
Oh, wow.
At my branch. It was so crushing that I was like meeting CEO, COO, you know, and going to every single awards dinner, you know, like every quarter, you know, and I'm picking my staff to go. And then like, I was just totally heroic.
Right.
And then we moved, they closed my branch because it was already decided that was going to happen, and they moved it into the Safeway. And I took on that project, and we actually gained $15 million in deposits on moving in during the first 6 months, which I thought was unprecedented. And I know it was, but I didn't even get acknowledged for it. Then I made a mistake. The previous manager kind of tricked me and into paying some overdrafts for her new company, based on the fact that these wires were coming in every Friday. And then, of course, I pay the overdrafts and the wire never comes in again. So I take a loss that's within my limits to take, but it puts a question mark on my career. Then finally, my manager promotes me, which she should have done long before that. There was another bigger branch that she could have put me at, and she put this other person that was totally failed, of course. And that's my arrogance, which is a character defect. But that was my assessment back then.
Sure.
And that did happen.
Yeah.
And then she said, okay, you're going to be my regional sales support. So you're going to go to these different branches and do that. And they took it back because of what had happened. So like she actually promoted me for 6 weeks or for six days.
Yeah.
And then she put me, then they undid everything and put me back in the same branch. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. So I went to another company, which did not work out. And then I went to Enda Lending. And at that time, I got an opportunity to take over this private bank that was just opening up in Santa Rosa area, First Republic Bank. You probably heard of it. They closed, right? The
Hmm.
First Republic Bank that I worked for was 3 generations ago. So it was bought out by Merrill Lynch, then became a new one. Then they bought themselves out from
Hmm.
Merrill Lynch and became the one that just got shut down. I
Oh,
guess
okay.
a year ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I was there, it was a very strong company. And during that time, I was out gathering clients and meeting people, and I gathered some really high end clients, and they were winery and vineyard. One was a winery and vineyard lender, and another was a winery and vineyard real estate person.
Oh, okay.
And in knowing them, I just began a conversation that ended up with us going into business together.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as I went into business with them, of course, I brought them into the bank. As soon as I went into business with them, the bank was like, "Hey, you can't do that," and basically fired me.
Oh, I see.
So I resigned, but it was the same thing.
Right. Sure.
So they wanted me out, but I went into that business. That business didn't actually work, but I ended up working with the lender and learning all about like winery and vineyard lending, commercial lending specifically. And through that process, I met some people that were trying to purchase a particular winery and vineyard, and I helped them do that. And the owner of that winery and vineyard ended up basically trusting me the most. So he hired me on as like his general manager.
Sure.
And during a couple of years of general managing it, I learned how to make wine on a very pedantic level, very, 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 immature level. I didn't know much, but I knew a little.
Yeah.
And enough to where in 2008, after that particular winery and vineyard sold, I started a winery, and not a vineyard, but just a winery with a business partner that had been with me on that project.
Yeah.
And we bought wine, and then we blended wine. And then when we started making the wine, I just used all of my banking, like number capability and my diligence. It's just like banking. You show up on time. You treat everything, with perfect diligence. You keep everything super clean. You keep really accurate records. And it turns out, as long as you don't allow some bacterial issues to keep the place super clean,
Right.
you can make some really good wine just by being diligent. So all my banking abilities, they basically transferred directly over to making wine. And then dealing with the customers was all sales.
Yeah.
All sales, the same thing. So what did we offer? We offered, my pool table was in the winery. And we would sit around and talk with people and hang out with them. And this is what they wanted. They wanted a wine country experience. They were coming to California for that specifically. And most of the time, all you get is a tasting room person who goes, pour, pour, pour. You want to buy something? Right? They don't go, you know what? This wine, I want to tell you what it took me to make this. It's a blend of these different things. It was a crazy process. I probably tried 6 different versions on people, and I took them around and let them taste it before I came up with this final blend.
Right.
And people are like, "Oh my gosh!" They have a story to tell.
Right.
If they buy that wine and they're having wine, you wouldn't believe what this guy went through to make this. Right.
Right.
That's what they wanted. They didn't want just something to drink.
Right.
So, everything converted, and it worked brilliantly. We bought wine in 2008. In 2009, we purchased wine again, and then I blended some wine, and the blends were always really good. 2010, I blended a whole bunch more wine, and we made maybe a couple tons of wine, which I mostly ruined because I just didn't know what I was doing. Right? I made it in a way that was really high alcohol and really bold. 2011 pretty much ruined everything because we got these new barrels in, and I didn't know how to take care of the barrels appropriately. And we put the wine in the barrels and it was completely ruined.
Oh.
So I had to learn my lesson on that.
Mm.
And in 2012, after learning my lesson, I did a month of prep. And then I did everything perfect. And I made 6 90-point plus wines, including a 95.
Wow.
So everything converted. If the things you don't know that you don't know, those are the things that are going to trip you up.
Right.
That experience does count. But whatever your process is now is probably the thing that's going to win for you wherever you go. It's not a new thing that you're going to learn there. You're going to learn, how to do things right, but you're going to map how you do things onto that. And that's going to be your winning formula.
Right. Yeah. Identifying your process, what steps make you successful. That's interesting. So what would you say?
You've used in the past.
Right. Exactly. And what would you say? Because you mentioned how you had to go find the experience, you had to have the experiences, you had to learn things, you had to go ask people, okay, exactly what is the process that you use? But then what would you say was your process that you've identified over these different career paths and your journey that was like, okay, this is how I put my unique twist that makes what I do successful, my process work?
I think it's a form of brutal honesty. With myself, that's how I got better. Asking for more knowledge, more help. I mean, before the 2012 season, I'd used a particular winemaker as like a really a great support system. But before that, I went to him and I said, I really need help with multiple things. And, can you provide that support? And he did. He just talked me through it. So, and then more courage, courage to just not already have it all together. Right. So no hiding. Just be exactly where you are. That's part of the brutal honesty. Is like exactly where you are. If you don't get to be exactly where you are, you're not going to get any better. Right. If you think you're in Toronto, but you're actually in Denver, you got a problem. You're acting like you're over here, but you're not. So you can't actually go anywhere. All you can do is keep pretending. But if you deal with exactly where you are, then you can plot out a path, right? You can say, well, I want to go up to the mountains. Okay, well, I better get on I-70 and then head this way and pay attention to the, cars in front of me and whatever, so that I can get there safely. If you pretend, oh, there's no impediments. Yeah, there's always impediments. Yeah. I can just get in the car. Well, do you got any gas? Right? And there's all kinds of little structural things that you need to deal with.
Right.
And if you're really honest with where you are, you can make progress, and you can make progress pretty quick.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. No, really being, having 100% accountability, being responsible for what you're doing and like who you are and where you're going. That's sometimes a tough conversation to have with yourself.
I've never had a moving accident. And the reason I believe, knock on wood, but the reason is because I always take 100% responsibility for everything. So if I'm coming up on a car and I know they're supposed to just, keep their lane and they're supposed to turn on the turn signal, I don't take that for granted. I don't just pass them. I make sure, right? And then when I pass them, I get up to out of their blind spot as fast as possible. And if somebody's in my blind spot, I take accountability for it. I move out of that area, right? So I make adjustments on the road as I'm going, taking responsibility for everything in my environment. And I think because of that, I've avoided, countless accidents.
Sure.
Because people do things all of a sudden and you don't expect it. And if you're just like, well, I have the right to do this and they're not going to step out into the road. Well, I don't do that. When I come up and there's a kid right there, I slow down even if he stopped. Because what if he just moves out in the middle of the road?
Right.
Now I can just stop. And it's
Yeah.
happened before, right? People like all of a sudden, it looks like they're stopped, but they're just involved in something else. And then they start moving and they're not paying attention.
Right.
And then what? You want that on your conscience? Right? Well, I had the right to go and they were stopped. And you have your rights, of course, and there's still injury or death.
Sure.
Right? So, that's, I don't know where I learned that lesson. It's partly just not putting faith and trust in others where I don't know what they're up to. I can definitely trust myself to manage a situation though. I can stop if I'm not sure what somebody else is doing. Have respect for them for the potential that they are, whatever they're dealing with, right? Even if they're driving angry, maybe they had the worst day. Maybe somebody in their family died, right?
Right.
Fine. I can let somebody like that go. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. It's like there's compassion for others, and then also take upon yourself to go, you know what, it's on me regardless of the situation. I'm gonna hold myself to this. But I think also if you want to grow as an individual, which sounds like, you hit a point in your 20s was like, I want to grow. I want to find the process and the path. If you're someone who's looking for that, if you've had that realization, then the extreme responsibility kind of has to come with that. Because I don't know how you can.
Yeah. I think I took that on. I took some seminars. Like you ever heard of Landmark?
No, I haven't heard that.
Okay. My sister invited my whole family to it, and my mom, went and then she paid for the seminar. It's like a weekend seminar, and it's related to EST, which was like a 70s training.
Okay, sure.
And in EST, it was a little more hardcore. They would be like, they would really criticize you if you had to go to the bathroom during this thing, right? Because you might miss the very thing that you needed to get.
Right.
And I really took a lot of what they said to heart. Now a lot of it was nonsense. Like the concept that nothing means anything, that you're the meaning making machine. I don't believe that's true. But it can be useful when you want to get yourself out of whatever trap you're in. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm making it mean this. And it doesn't necessarily mean that. And, I'm the one that's offended. But do I need to be offended? Right? Or is that a choice? Am I just choosing to be offended to defend myself in some way? Right? So you can say, it's like it provided me an access for self-examination. And that was late 20s. And it was after all that when I, shut down the business. Like it's actually maybe within 6 months, I shut down the casino, got into banking, because I think it removed some anxiety from me. Like, hey, wait a minute.
Interesting.
Do I need to be anxious? I mean, like, is it anxiety producing, or am I just used to being anxious about these things because of my experiences as a child?
Right.
And am I still a child? I don't think so. I'm in my 20s. Right. And I have children, and I better take care of them. So it gave me a very new perspective. And I think I used it to great effect. I don't participate anymore because some of the dogma is very, I would say it's along the lines of ends justify the means.
I see.
Like you could get into that pattern of belief from that kind of a training.
No, that makes sense. So how did, you mentioned your family and your kids, and even on the questionnaire, you mentioned them as well. So what is it? Was it being a father? How's that role played an effect in your life? Obviously, you sound like you're very close to your family, and they've played a major role. So, what has been like, and how has that affected your journey as well?
I think even before I became a father, I knew partly that I needed to be a father, like as a structure,
Sure.
like that I was going to be not so much missing out, but maybe I would be lost without that kind of a purpose.
Mm.
And, I'd seen a lot of, friends in high school and they didn't seem to go anywhere. And I thought I was very vulnerable to that. So, just kind of going down that. I remember working a construction job at, let's say, 19.
Yeah.
And I worked this construction job for like 6 months and made a bunch of money. And then I was laid off. By that time I had a motorcycle and a car. And I went through like a summer of, I don't know, call it debauchery or lots of dating.
Right.
And at the end of the summer, I was just dead empty.
Mm.
And I thought, this is no life. This is no life. I'm interacting with people, but they're not having positive experiences.
Yeah.
And I'm not having a positive experience. It's things are we're going to some dance and then we're ending up in, somebody's bed, and it's like, this
right.
just feels so like usury, and I didn't want to participate anymore.
Right.
So I decided, okay, I can't do that. And I just kind of cut myself off and just, I attended things. I'd gotten myself onto a softball team and I was, played great and, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I would participate in like going out with friends, but I just didn't participate in any of the, like going home with anybody or going out on dates for 6-8 months.
Sure.
And then I met my ex, and she was older. And I thought, well, this could be a good fit because like I did not have great experiences with the younger girls, multiple of which had cheated on me in the more longer term type stuff.
Yeah.
And then I went the, like, let's go, jump into bed type of thing. And I'm like, that's making me miserable. And they don't even want to talk to me after a couple of weeks, right?
Right.
They're ashamed.
Sure.
And then basically I'm ashamed. So it's like, that's a blind tunnel. There's nothing there.
Right. No win.
Right. For anybody. It's a lose-lose situation. So I basically started dating this older lady. And then she actually said, maybe we might want to consider, making a real relationship and a family. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like something fulfilling.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So that led me into it. And then she was even like, when we finally got pregnant, right after we got married. So like we got married, and next month she was pregnant.
Wow.
She's like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And I was like, oh no. Don't even think that. We are ready for this. This is the right path. I knew 100%. Like, wow. Kids need to be here. And, I didn't know for her, but I knew for me, like that was 100%. I want to be a father. That's my path.
See, that's so unique.
That's so unique. Maybe it was a need though, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I was addressing a defect with that. When I look back, I think I was vulnerable to being miserable without a purpose. you
Yeah.
know, and having that purpose, having a child that I could pour all my love and attention and everything that I had learned into was necessary. And probably it's necessary for everybody. But in our
Right.
society, we've we've taken that away. We've
Yeah.
said, oh, there's too many people on Earth. There's, oh, how do you know? Well, it took me 45 minutes to go to work today, and the traffic was so bad.
Right.
It's like, I don't. Those two are not facts. They don't
Right.
correlate. Just because
Right.
there's traffic, you could live in a rural area, right? I know rural's been kind of vilified, but I mean, like, it doesn't mean that there's too many people. That's just the narrative that's been pushed on us.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there's so much space out there in the world. There's people act like we're living in a, living on top of each other. It's just not the case. But that's really unique. The fact that you felt like, no, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to take on something of meaning, of purpose, something of depth.
I don't know that I felt like I was ready for it. I felt like it was necessary.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
no, we have to do this because this is the path. This is the right path.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
am I ready for it? I know that I'm capable of it because God made me.
Sure.
Right? I know that. So, and this is what people do. So
Yeah.
I know I'll be able to figure it out. Do I have all the answers? No, not at all. Right? Am I going to have to ask, questions? Am I going to, need support? Of course. Right? I mean, everybody does. But yeah, I don't think I necessarily felt ready, but I definitely felt like this is the right path and we're already on it and we can't get off it. Like, kind of like if you were thinking of jumping into the water from like 30 feet, like a cliff dive, and it's like, oh, your stomach is like, oh, I don't want to do this, but you're already here. That's what
Right.
there is to do.
Yeah.
You didn't get up here to walk back down, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's time to go. And you know that you're going to hit the water and you're going to be able to deal with it. You don't know exactly what it's going to feel like, and you don't know how deep you're going to go, but you've been here before in other ways.
Right. No, that's a good point. I think you've got a good outlook on finding, knowing the difference between what was meaningful and what's the right path versus, okay, this is a path that doesn't lead anywhere, which I think a lot of people struggle to navigate that or don't want to see those answers.
I think some of our society has basically pitched us on that specifically. That you should be trying things out.
Right.
And see if you can make this work and see if you can make that type of situation work. And none of those situations work. I mean, like, eventually you got to get down to binary, right? Real, unreal, true, untrue. Works, doesn't work. And just because you finagle something into, something that you can tolerate doesn't mean that it works.
Sure.
So I would say people running through relationships and, trying out, you don't need to try anything out. You need to make yourself into the kind of person that you'd want to be in a relationship with, and then your relationships will work.
Yeah. Attract what you are, become who you want to have in your life.
And be brutally honest with yourself, about your vulnerabilities. Don't necessarily be brutally honest with them, because why do you need to put that on them, right?
Right.
That's not what a relationship's necessarily for. It's not for counseling. It's for relating in a really, in a way that's sacred.
Yeah. So how did you do that in your relationships and in your marriages and in your relationships? Like, what's the how did you relate? Like, how did you, because that's an interesting perspective. Sometimes some people think relationships are that, well, we're leaning on one another. We come together and solve these problems. And that's one of the first times I've heard it's like, no, you're there to have a relationship, to relate to, but explain that to me.
I mean, I think I learned that after failing in relationship, not before.
Sure.
And I blamed, of course, a lot of it on choice, but now I've come to understand better. Like it was my misunderstanding about the way things worked, more than it was the fact that that they misunderstood maybe worse than me. But I mean, like even in my relationships that, like I have 2 baby mamas, and with my baby mamas, I tried to push the relationship into sacred. I was always pushing for that. And when I couldn't get that, I knew it was a problem.
Right.
Like this actually doesn't work if we can't actually relate in the right ways.
Right.
If it's not sacred, if it's not, if we're not sacred to each other, if we don't honor each other and are loyal to each other and respectful with each other, and like take the time to make sure all those things are met. I mean, I think of it like now when I need to go to work, let's say I need to be there at 7, I wake up at probably 5. And I make the same breakfast I always make because I know that's what's necessary. When I was in those relationships, maybe I was going to go to McDonald's, right?
Right.
Totally racking my body just for some idea that I need some more sleep.
Right.
And if I needed more sleep, I could have gone to bed earlier. Right? There's a totally different way of doing things. That's what I didn't realize. There's a totally different way of doing things that is easily accessible if with an open mind. And with a closed mind, with rules that aren't actually rules and beliefs that aren't actually true, you will find yourself trapped. Well, I have to get up at 6:30 because I need to sleep that long. And then I don't have time to make myself the kind of breakfast that I would make that would really honor my body. So I have to settle for da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, years later, you're fat and and you're like, oh, I just can't seem to get out of this. Well, yeah, because you're doing things incorrectly. And it's the incorrect is your belief system. The incorrect is the parameters that you put on yourself. And I found that in relationship, the parameters that I put on myself in those relationships made them not work. Specifically not work in the way that I knew they had to work. And of course, mostly I blamed them at the time. And looking back, it was a dance. Everything's a dance.
Sure.
Right? So somebody said something, I listened to this podcast, and it was from the smartest man in the world, this guy that's got this plus 200, and he was describing Einstein's theories and how, like, the future is an event that you're getting to. So it doesn't exist yet. And I thought that maps perfectly onto this. If you believe in who you are and what, like in correct parameters, then you can create a future and then that's where you're heading. It doesn't exist yet.
Right.
Just like he's saying, if you're on the bus and it's moving forward, the 20 seconds forward doesn't exist yet. So you on the bus doesn't exist yet. It's not a point yet. It's an event that's going to happen.
Right.
It's a totally different way of thinking of it than just draw a straight line, point to point. There you are. Right. No, that point doesn't exist yet. It's the future. It's the future that you have the ability to create from your vision of today based on who you are and the parameters that you have. So I only heard that yesterday, but I thought it was brilliant.
No, I mean, that's really, I love that. I think it's super insightful. It almost sounds a little bit like, you hear people talk a lot about manifesting,
Hmm.
knowing and looking and believing in what you're going to be in the future to build that
Right.
future. I don't know.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's absolutely correct, especially if you know where you are now.
Mm,
Right. So you know who you are, like know thyself, that
mm,
whole concept. If you
yeah.
really understand yourself, then you're going to be able to plot out that event in the future where you're there.
Yeah.
And all the things that it takes to get there are going to manifest themselves in your life. And it's not a fantasy because you plotted it out from where you are. You know you're in Denver and you need to go to Colorado Springs, and you know the road, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of things are going to happen, right? Cars are going to get in front of you, and you're going to do all kinds of things, and maybe you're going to stop at a rest stop, and you don't know that in advance, right?
Sure.
So it doesn't exist yet, but you know it will exist, and I think
Right.
that's what they mean by manifesting.
Yeah. Having a belief, knowing that that's where you will get, and you just have to take that road.
And it's well grounded because you
Mm,
know where you are.
right. Right. Which I think comes back to your point of, you have to be willing to ask yourself the tough questions and be truthful with yourself. Otherwise, you've completely distorted your journey and the destination.
I had that happen recently when I moved here to Nevada. I Things didn't go well. We got into a remodel project that just went way too long, and I made mistakes that there were lots of information that I didn't know that I didn't know.
Hmm.
And then the entire environment was, it's kind of like isolating, or I felt isolated. And finally, in September, I was like, you know what? I got to put a line in the sand. And I started a fast.
Mm,
And I didn't have any intention of how long the fast would go, but I just thought, okay, I just have to stop this madness because
sure.
I'm not, I'm not dealing with whatever I need to deal with to get back on track.
Like health
Like
wise?
everything,
Okay.
mentally,
Oh, I
physically,
see.
spiritually, emotionally. Like
Mm,
I'm on a path where I don't feel like I have any say. It's like
mm,
I'm at the effect of this environment and my state of being.
right. Okay.
And
Yes.
so I started this fast, and then 5 days later, I realized that if I went 47 days, that it would be up to the election. It
Mm,
would be November 5th when I quit. And so I said to my son who lives with me, I said, well, maybe we should just try that. Because
yeah.
after a few days of fasting, you're not hungry anymore.
Right.
It's like 3 or 4 days and the hunger's long gone. And everything else was brutal, but I made it like 40 days.
Wow.
And
Wow.
during that process, it really became clear to me like how distorted everything had become in my
Mm,
world, and how I was kind of, falling back into patterns of, okay, I'm stuck here. I got to take care of my mom who lives, little, I don't know, 30 minutes away. And I'm out here for her, but it's not working for me,
right.
right? The environment's not working for me. And I've had that experience before. So I didn't think, oh, it's the environment. I thought, it's me, or it's primarily me. It's how I'm responding to whatever this is.
Mm,
So I need to stop this and figure it out. And the way I stopped it was stop, stop the madness. As soon as I
right.
stopped eating, um, just life became clearer and clearer and clearer to the point where after, and then the healing started too.
Mm,
So when you stop eating, your body goes into a healing mode after about a week because your digestive system is shut down. Your body has like 50% more energy to pour into healing.
Interesting.
So, and I found that mentally too. The longer I didn't eat, the clearer my mind became. Now there was horrible suffering involved there too. After 11 days, and my sister, David's wife,
Yeah.
she had fasted before, and I called her on like day 11. I'm like, I'm so sore, and I can't. Last night I went to bed, and I had to bring pillows from the couch so that I could try to sleep sitting up. Because if I laid down, my entire muscles would seize up. And she said, "Oh, you have to drink broth, because if you drink broth, it doesn't have any calories, or hardly any, and it has salt." And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. I'll try anything at this point. I mean, like, I can't even lay down.
Right.
My muscles are like, seizing up. It turns out that was it. Totally the salt. And within a couple of days, everything was great. But then I kept having this acid stomach. And I leaned on her a little bit, and she never got over the acid stomach. It took me 33 days to get over acid stomach. I haven't had acid stomach since. It's gone. I've had it since I was probably 5, maybe younger than that. So I would eat things, and I would get acid stomach. And I would, I eventually stopped because I was so nauseous for like 4 days in a row, but no acid stomach with the nausea. And I threw up on day 40, and I'm like, okay, that's it. We're done. And all I threw up was like bile. There was nothing in my stomach to throw up. But yeah, like 40 days. And I came out of that. I'm still like dealing with the transformation of it. Like, I don't even know what it did to me, but it did something remarkable. I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was saying something, and the heater broke, and I spent multiple hours fixing it, and I did fix it. And I thought, I can, if I really want to lose more weight, I can just go on a calorie restrictive diet.
Sure.
I can tolerate anything. If I want to do anything, I've already fasted for 40 days, and that was so brutally hard. There's no obstacles in my way anymore.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I can't like set my mind to and just accomplish.
Yeah.
And tolerate the discomfort, right? So if I know something's going to be uncomfortable, well, I've already dealt with complete discomfort, skin crawling discomfort for day after day after day. I know I can do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's something about. Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, like the whole biblical aspect of it. I wonder if that wasn't a piece of it, like, because first the fast, then he started on his gospel, right?
Right.
So it wasn't the other way around. It was first the purge of all that, all the mind, like, I felt like I was being purged mentally and emotionally and physically of like society, society's grip on me. And they say the society's run by the devil, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably true.
Yeah.
But God is in there, right? God is in you.
Right.
So
that's really interesting. Yeah, I definitely think there's something to pushing yourself to do really taxing things that then, I mean, I think it becomes eye-opening about your own personal abilities, and then your ability to push past and accomplish, and mentally, physically, like you're saying. What have you been doing now that you're not fasting for 40 days? What's kind of been your protocol now, like trying to not go back, but like moving forward? And then, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, getting up earlier, definitely. I wake up really energetic.
Mm.
So I don't feel the whatever that goop.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it. Like I'm like I'm walking in like a quicksand or like a gel or something. That seems
Yeah.
to be removed, and it's giving me just an energy level that I find infectious. So like
Mm.
I feel like playing more and joking more and laughing more and like just being fun.
Right.
And in the way that it had gone down, it wasn't fun at all. There was nothing fun about it. It was like, we're just struggling here. We're just trapped.
Yeah.
So it's definitely given me a fresh mindset and a much deeper understanding of like, what do I want to do? What do I, you know, I've never really been focused on money.
Mm.
So I'm not, I'm not going to go down that path, but, focused on, fun and accomplishments and, doing things that are amazing. Like we've got a condo down in Palm Springs in late February, and
Mm.
we're going to do Cactus to Clouds.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if you heard of that.
Is that a run of some sorts?
It's a hike.
A hike. Okay.
Yeah, over 22 miles. You go up
Wow.
10,700 feet. And the
Wow.
first 5 miles, you go up 5,000 feet. So it's quite a slog, and you have to start at like 2 a.m. It's almost like a Everest, type deal.
Sure.
But at the very top, there's a tram. So you don't have to hike back down.
Oh, that's a nice plus.
Thank goodness, because, you get up to the top, they have a restaurant and a tram. So you can reward yourself with lots of calories.
Yeah.
And I have a whole group that's going to come with us. I mean,
Oh, that's
it's a
awesome.
big event. And, just something, like those types of things. Those are the types of things I want to focus on.
Right.
Not making money so that I can spend money and then whatever. Right? I
Right.
mean, like I don't necessarily even believe in the way the economy runs. It's just, I don't think it's necessarily good for people. I
Right.
think people are so much more than that. And when you tap into that, you're tapping into that societal aspect of things.
Yeah.
And that's what I just purged.
Mm.
So I don't want to tap back into it. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a different perspective. It's like a different way of looking at things and different way of setting goals. Like,
Yeah.
who do I want to be in X that's in alignment with who I am now and what I know now and believe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A clarity for what's important and what's of value. Huh. So what are you eating now? Like what's your diet consist of?
So morning I have 3 pieces of applewood bacon, uncured,
Mm-hmm.
3 eggs with some onions and mushrooms, and cooked in the bacon grease.
Sure.
And then afternoons I have either chicken or steak or some sort of a meat, like a hamburger meat with like at first I was doing tacos, but I found that I'm not really into the whole tortillas, even the corn tortillas.
Right.
So and I had zero bread. And right now I just like a week ago I decided to just cut myself back to like 1,200 calories because I lost a lot of weight. I lost like 40 pounds.
Oh, wow.
But I want to be at a weight that's appropriate for my height, and I'm like 5'9".
Gotcha.
And that's, probably 165, and I'm 195.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So rather than being so aggressive and doing another fast, which
Right.
I don't think I'm up to right now, I just decided to cut calories.
Sure.
And the first couple of days my skin was crawling. And during that time while my skin was crawling, I thought, this is nothing I can't handle.
Yeah.
Now it's not even a problem. I'm just eating 2 meals a day. I try to eat dinner around 3, so breakfast probably going to be 6 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then, I'm going to sleep at 8 or 9 o'clock. And I'm either eating, a chicken or a steak, and then I'll supplement, like I'll have like maybe a handful of pistachios. And then we have some oranges, which I really enjoy oranges. So I'll have an orange.
So really kind of a whole foods type diet.
Whole foods, lots of meat, lots of fat, as much fat as possible.
Yeah.
So if I have veggies, I'll put butter on it, and I have like some organic butter.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. When I first came off, it's the same diet, just 3 full meals.
Sure.
And more. And
right.
I found like that doesn't actually work for me. It works for me to be stable.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work for me to continue dropping the weight. And the thing about dropping the weight is I know my body's going to feel a ton better, lighter, because it already does. Right? And I've been 165 before, and I know how much easier it is to not carry a 30-pound backpack.
Right.
Right. Or a 70-pound backpack, which I was. Right. I mean, like, it's just so much easier.
Yeah. No
and
doubt.
It puts all the things in reach that I want to do. Like, I've hiked a bunch of the John Muir Trail. I want to hike the rest of it. If I have to carry, a 30-pound backpack plus my own 30-pound backpack, that's going to be a lot harder than if I get rid of this 30-pound backpack and just carry the tent and all the, light equipment that I can buy.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah, it definitely allows you the control of, doing the things you want to do and taking that journey. Yeah.
Right. It's Absolutely. Real freedom. I'm my own jailer. Right. I trap myself with incorrect beliefs about myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that the fast freed me up from is like, okay, you've learned a lot, but you really got to put it into practice.
Yeah.
You've studied all your philosophy, and you've read all your books, and you read the Red Book from Carl Jung, and all these transformative processes. Well, it's time for you to just be on your journey, making things happen in reality, not just in your mind and understanding things. Right.
Apply the things you've learned, apply the correct principles.
Yeah, and then you actually learn them, because I don't think you know them. Like I knew the principles of fasting, and I watched videos, and there's a place down in Costa Rica where I've watched a whole bunch of videos, and and the people are talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I didn't know anything.
Right.
Until I did it. Right.
Yeah.
Sister said, oh, I've done 28 days, and I'm like, okay, well, I've done a week before, and that's all I know. And I didn't, I heard what they said, they conveyed it, but it wasn't like knowledge to your bones. And I think that's the only real knowledge there is. That's why you have to be a father, because that knowledge becomes ingrained in you, and then you can pass it on. The idea of being a father, right? Yeah. Like you know, but you know a lot of things. Like your experience is everything.
Right. It's the ability to apply it into your life and actually have lived it that makes it real. Huh.
Yeah, and then you have a real life, right?
Right.
And if you don't, you have an unreal life.
Right. Right. Well, I have one last question, and then, I appreciate you letting me interview you, get to talk to you. I've just loved what we've talked about. I think there's so many great
Me too.
aspects and lessons that we've discussed that are just so applicable in life. What would be, to the younger generation coming up, what would be a piece of advice, or what would you tell them to focus on in those transformational years leading into their life to get ahead and to really focus on that'll make a difference for them?
one thing would be to understand that you are super important. You're everything. You know, that as important as anybody on this earth, you know, your unique expression is ultimately valuable. And never discount yourself, and never believe in the story that you're just one of the crowd. That whatever you have isn't, it's brand new, and we'll never see it again. And you should treat yourself that way, and believe in yourself. You know, believe in and express yourself. Be exactly who you are. Don't pretend.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I couldn't have said better myself. I love that, and I think people desperately need to hear that. Well, Eric, it's been a lot of fun. We'll have to do this again. I enjoyed hearing your stories and learning from you, and just I think that's the great part about communicating is we get to learn from each other and
I
understand.
Completely agree.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've enjoyed our conversation very much. Thank you, Matt.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Have a fantastic day.
Hey, you too. Thanks.
Cheers.